Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Between the Covers. My name is Bradley Shaw, and tonight I'm talking to author Lachlan Waterman, who's written a wonderful book on the Carlton Football Club called The Mosquito Fleet. Good evening, Lachlan. How are you?
Yeah, good. Thanks, Brad. Thanks for having me on.
No, my pleasure. So please do tell us all about The Mosquito Fleet, this wonderful book.
Well, to tell all would take a while, but I'll give you the
just the summary.
Give you the nuts and bolts. So for those that don't know, the Mosquito Fleet was Carlton's famous group of footballers in the late 70s and early 80s. They were named the Mosquito Fleet mainly because they were so small. It was one of the smallest teams in the history of the game. Virtually, there are only 4 players over 190 centimetres. So even in the ruck,
he's short for a footballer.
Yeah. But they were really good. They were skillful. They were fast. Very clever, and they won 3 premierships in 4 years. And a night footy wasn't sort of just coming in the early 80s. They won a night grand final. They're Carlton's first night grand final win ever. So 3 flags in 4 years plus a night flag. So they were very successful.
Wonderful. And what motivated you to write this book? I mean, obviously that's quite a legacy, but I mean, why was it your cause? What inspired you to write this story?
Good question. I think you probably, and I'm sure there's other writers watching this, you probably need more than 1 or 2 reasons to write a book, because you probably need 100 reasons. But I've certainly got a passion for writing. I've got a passion for the craft. As a kid, that's all I read. I just read sports books. I've developed myself a little bit since then. I've looked in other genres as well, but sport's been pretty much, and footy's been a big part of my life. So I pretty much grew up with watching the Mosquito Fleet as a kid.
Yeah.
And you don't realise how lucky you are until you go through. If you're a Carlton supporter nowadays, this generation have had no success at all. So
it's definitely a good period.
Yeah, so footy was different obviously back then. It was exclusively played on a Saturday afternoon at 2:00. The players were semi-professional. They worked a 9 to 5 job and trained in the evenings. So that possibly they may have had more balance than what the current athlete has.
That's right. It is a challenge when you look at the media and the sponsorship criteria of today's sports athletes. It's I think back in those days they did it for a bit more, I guess, the love of the game more so. I'm not saying they don't today, but I just think there was more of it back then.
Yeah, that's right. Well,
it came across, they were personalities.
Now. Yeah, that's right. It's a business now. It's a vocation. Players have their annual leave. So it's a completely different ball game now, and obviously back then it was suburban footy, so it was that tribal, suburb versus suburb, Collingwood versus Carlton. They were both successful clubs, so they were that was the big grudge match, and that rivalry's mentioned in the book as well. So,
and it was the period when you could take a hit without having to worry about it too much. You just get up and get going.
Well, that was just part of the game. The old shirt front.
Just have a bit of a nudge, bit of a hit. It's all good.
Exactly. So, and the grand finals were often just all in brawl. Normally.
I remember that.
And it was all the old adage was, if you won the fight, you won the game, and that was where Carlton. There were a few people that thought Carlton were a little bit soft. And could be unsettled, but they proved that not to be the case in the 1982 grand final against Richmond. So that was a bit of an upset, that one.
I think that's what's appealing about your book, is that it is such an underdog tale as well. As much as they won the 3, I think the first one would have been probably the hardest, and I think that's where they would have had, the precedence, but also to maintain that winning streak.
I think that probably the third one was the hardest. That was the one that they weren't expected to win. But the first one they were expected to win, but they're actually in a lot of trouble. They were getting beaten by 4 goals. So, and that's a bit of a theme through they were often getting beaten.
Yeah. So that underdog thing.
Yeah, it was like it brought out the best in everyone when they were getting beaten, which is it's probably a good habit or a good attribute to have.
Absolutely. Don't we all strive harder when the chips are down? I think that's characteristic of Aussies. So tell me about the book as well. Was it hard to research? Did they give you time? Was it interviewing a lot of the people? I know you've got a story in there.
Another good interesting question there, Brad, is I think most of the interviews with the past players and the coaches, I think there's only about 3 or 4 that I did face to face because of COVID. So most of the chats were over the phone, like what we're doing now, not video conferencing, but just over the phone. And a lot of the past players were fantastic in terms of they'd send me a text or say, I forgot to mention this, or they'd even send me an email and go, see if you can get this story in.
Good.
They gave me a lot of really good material in terms of some of the off-field shenanigans and some of the on-field stories as well. So
good. It's a great read. I think culturally it's a great book for Australians to understand that period, that game, as much as they were the characters. They were
that's right. Sportsmen. Yeah, you're right. And I think all teams had their characters as well. It wasn't just Carlton, but it was, and there was as much going on in the crowds back then as there was on the field.
Like the little streaker, perhaps?
I wasn't thinking of that, but I was thinking in terms of there was no OH&S back then.
No.
So people would stand on cans of beer to get a high vantage point of the game. There was one story, one of the players told me that the souvenir stand caught on fire one day at Victoria Park. So there's a couple of Collingwood supporters with their scarves being burnt as the game was going on. So things like that, and obviously there was people that could bring. I'm pretty sure they could bring alcohol in to the ground.
Yep, I think so.
So bring
an esky.
On a warm day, bring an esky into the ground, and all those little things that,
especially on the hills.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that was the other thing. You were sitting on the terraces or standing on the terraces or on the hill.
Yeah.
Whereas nowadays you're watching the game in an enclosed stadium with bucket seats. So
that's crazy. Different. I mean, it wasn't a football game on a Saturday afternoon if you didn't get a streaker, in my opinion. I thought that was always a highlight. If you catch one, it's like, and the cameras were all quickly,
and the other thing that I found doing a bit of research just watching games was how terrible the grounds were, the condition of the grounds. Just absolute bog heaps. Like Moorabbin, just an absolute...
I remember one game. I don't know what it was.
They wouldn't play on those sort of grounds these days.
I remember one game. I don't remember who it was at the time. I think it was Hawthorn, but they were just covered head to toe in mud. You couldn't even tell which team was what.
Yeah, that's right.
Like, it was just absolutely saturation. It was just an amazing game, and like I said, it was just so much fun. But there's just some great generation.
I'm not sure whether grounds weren't drained as well as they are now, or just everything's improved, I guess.
Who knows? It could be climate. What is that word they're talking about? Climate issues. You know how we've got.
It could be.
It could be changing the environment.
But even back then, the MCG used to be a bog heap in the middle of winter. And the other interesting one with that grand final, the night one that they won, it was actually at Waverley, and it was postponed because the ground was in such horrendous condition. God. So you can imagine a game being postponed. I mean, you could with COVID and stuff, but not because the ground was in such poor condition.
No. So tell me about writing the book. How long did it take you to sit down and plan it out? Like, once you started thinking about it and accessing the information to getting some interviews, what did you start thinking? Okay, I can make a book out of this, and allocating time. How long did that take you?
I think originally I was just thinking, I've got a good idea for the first chapter. Which is sort of the end of the era when they got beaten by Essendon, and then Essendon took over and made 3 grand. So it sort of went backwards. So that was how. And then from there, I was looking at because you forget they went through 3 coaches in 4 years while they were still having the success, and there was always Carlton are notorious for political upheavals. And that's another interesting part of the book as well. So there's often changes in presidency, and there's often a lot of in-house fighting, and it's still going on these days.
Yeah, sure.
So it's political. It's a very interesting club when you actually delve a little bit deeper into the mechanics of it and the subculture of the club as well.
Sure.
But back then they demanded success, and they had a lot of people, like prime ministers were number one ticket holders. They had successful businessmen. John Elliott came in a little bit later in the piece. So they're a club that demanded success, and if they didn't get it, people were given their marching orders.
Yeah, for sure.
So in terms of the writing, originally that first chapter, once I got that first chapter done, then everything started to piece together for me in terms of, then it went pretty much sequentially from the late 70s into the early 80s. So good. But the writing, I found, I'm a morning person, so I found that the mornings I normally sort of aimed at about 1,000 words a day if I could. And then Saturdays and Sundays, I went 7 days a week. I found once I got into it, it was good.
It's easy,
get a bit more done on a weekend. I found.
And they gave you the access, as you said, to the research. That helps. I think you didn't have to chase them down or batter them.
Yeah, I mean, and the other thing
support
these days is you can look up so much stuff on YouTube, past matches. So that was always handy, just in terms of getting the visual side of what happened. I mean, the club was very good in terms of access to. I spoke with a lot of staff members as well. Spoke with the coaches. So spoke with a sports psychologist, guy called Laurie Hayden, who ended up getting he was a sports psychologist for the Australia 2 crew. So that catapulted his career in a way, his time at Carlton.
Sure. So tell me, if I can ask, what was your favourite part of the book to write? What was you the most, I think, enjoyed part
I actually enjoy writing about the actual matches. That's what I enjoy the most. But I enjoy some of the stories and some of the characters as well.
You must have had a ringside seat in some of that information. What did you leave out of the book? Are you going to give us some of those snippets of the pieces you weren't allowed to tell the stories of?
No, I've put most of them in, actually.
That's another book altogether.
The guy who gave me a lot of information was Mark McClure, who wrote the foreword. He wrote a great foreword and put a lot of effort into the foreword, he was often ringing me saying, I forgot this or I forgot that, or I want to put this in. But he was very big on there were a lot of volunteers at Carlton during that period of time, and a lot of people were just there because they loved the club. And they put in a lot of time behind the scenes, and he wanted to recognise all those guys, and there were a lot of them. So what was the question? I've forgotten.
I was going to say, what did you leave out of the book? Like, when you're editing, you sort of think, I shouldn't put that in, I should put that in. You've obviously got a lot of material.
I didn't leave too much out.
No, that's good. There's a lot of good stories in there.
That's what makes it the stories. Some of the humour, some of the just that era.
So from writing the book and starting the book, did you always have publishing it in mind, or did you find that was a later recourse where you thought, you know what, this could actually work as a product published? Or
I always thought it would be a published. I knew there'd be interest, and the other thing is, it's 40 years. Like, there's a lot of water under the bridge.
Good period. There's a lot of
it is, because you get my era you get my era that look back and think how lucky we were to actually watch those guys. And the other thing is, those guys now are sort of forgotten a little bit. But they have their reunions that are normally pretty popular.
That's awesome.
And that was the other thing. It sort of tied in. I thought, 40 years since they had that successful period is a good timeline.
No, that's
awesome. Wouldn't want to leave it too much longer.
No, go to 50 years. What do you do? Another book? But so this is your first book in this genre and this style. What have you written before in other ways? You said you like writing. What else have you written before?
I wrote a book called Kings of the Game, which is more of a coaching book. That was my first book, 2016.
Yep.
And that was more because I come from a strong coaching background, so I had a lot of material. I used to collect a lot of articles. But this is before the internet boom, so I just used to hoard a lot of stuff, a lot of old articles and footy articles about coaches and coaching and techniques. So I had a lot of information. So that wasn't. I don't think that was as good as this book, but I never really considered writing a book before. It was something that just happened in a way.
Do you think you'll do it again? Do you think there'll be other stories? You're going to focus on other football clubs and maybe tell their stories and see, go and focus on Collingwood and see if you can, put them in perspective.
The arch enemy. It's like anything. It's like I compare writing a book to marathon running. And they say that once you run one marathon, you want to run another one.
Yeah,
that was a little bit. I can actually understand people saying that because I felt that I had that bug that I wanted to write another one, not straight after the first one, but I just felt as though I could do it and do it a bit better than the first time. So hopefully that's what I've done. But to answer your question, possibly, not straight away, but. I think I wouldn't mind having a crack at another one, and down the track, I wouldn't mind having a crack at a sports novel.
Like an actual fiction, like creative characterization.
Which would be a bit harder. But that's something I read. The guys that I like reading Ian Fleming. Who wrote all the James Bond books. So when I read, I like to read I grab it, read it, and finish it in 2 days, ideally. That's what I had in mind when I wrote this. I wanted people to grab it and not just read a chapter and put it away. I think read it and then keep reading
and be engaged.
Yeah.
And I think they will, because your stories and characters and you like I said, the credibility of the people involved in the period and the stories or the events.
And they're all true stories.
They're very good.
That's the great thing. They're all true stories. They're not fictitious stories that you make up.
Which is even more amazing on some level. You go, okay, that's fun.
Yeah.
So what would you tell someone who was looking to write their first book and venture into this game? What would you encourage them to do?
Well, write about something you're passionate about. I think that would be the first thing. And then I think in terms of the writing process, the other thing that I would recommend someone is if you're writing, it's good to be reading a lot. I'm a pretty passionate reader. I'm not reading as much, but when I was writing, I was reading about 3 books a week. In different genres, because you get different ideas and different expressions and
ways.
So I'd encourage people to read not just their genre but a couple of different other genres. But write about what you're passionate about. I think that comes through. That'd be my best tip. And then once you've decided that you're going to do it, then get into a routine. Some people prefer to write it in the evenings. So that wouldn't work for me, but some people prefer the mornings, so everyone's different. And then if you can have some sort of goal every day, whether it be 500 words a day or 1,000, I think that's a good thing to do as well. Get into that habit,
definitely.
And that's when you start to get the swing of things.
And so what have you had anybody else read this when you were writing it? Did you get some feedback on it as you were writing?
I had a few mates that
and what did they found? What did they say?
They were good. I mean, they said they just sent it back and said, I like this, I don't like that. I got quite a few people to proofread it. And that was a part of my routine a little bit, was rereading what I'd done the next day and just not editing but just brushing it up a little bit and then going from there. So and that's the other thing. Since I've written a couple of books, I've got a few contacts that happened out of the blue. And as you probably know, I've got a couple of contacts in America, in the States. I read a book and it was called Emulating the Masters, which is a written book, a book about writing. Sent an email to the guy who wrote that book. He sent an email back. Next thing, he's given me an endorsement for the book. So it can happen. Things can happen pretty quickly.
And that's the thing. And the book's got a cultural position, and that's what you've taken on board. And I love that it's got, a historical relevance to our culture as Australians. It's not just a book about being about a football fan, but it's a book about realities and the pains and the fears and the triumphs of a period that, as you said, a lot of the generations don't remember. Our generations do, but again, the youngers will enjoy this. Grandfathers and fathers especially will enjoy this, and football fans all over will love it. So you've done a great job.
Thank you.
Just for everybody watching, if I could quickly just add, this book is available in September. It's coming out, and you can grab it from our website or anywhere that books are sold on your local bookstores or libraries. So please support Paul Laughlin's book and grab a copy of it, because it is wonderful, and support local bookstores where you can. They're a great business, and we need them to stay in business. So one little last question. What do you do while you're not writing? Are you still coaching, or are you still involved in sports?
Well, I went for a run this morning, so I've just got back into it sort of towards the end of. I don't tend to run much during winter.
Who does?
Well,
I'm just happy to stay inside. That's for sure.
There's a few people I know. I went for a run, so I try and keep myself fairly fit. I don't do much gym work these days, but to just choose to go for a run. I love my cricket. I love most of my sports. I love cricket as well. I love watching the Olympics.
Yeah, that went well. That was a strange event this year, I guess. But
well, it's funny with the Olympics.
In a way, but...
Well, it's funny with the Olympics. I thought without the crowd it would lose a bit, but I thought it went okay, especially
the media did really well.
Yeah,
keeping the energy for it.
That's right.
It must have been harder for the athletes though, not to have the immediate response, the reaction.
Yeah, and same with the football at the moment. Without a crowd, they're doing well.
Yeah,
but
it's been a crazy 18 months, really.
Well, I mean, and not forgetting we had the fires over here before COVID. Yeah. Then we had
that
fires.
Hit straight away, didn't it?
And what else do we have? We had some other tragedy.
Fires and droughts and
crazy. Yeah, we had fires and COVID. So
last 2.5 years. I don't know how we're surviving.
It's madness.
But anyway, so at least people can grab a book and get some enjoy some history.
Reading.
You've done a great job with it. So tell me, what do you hope? Just one question: what do you hope the readers, when they buy this book, what they're going to get out of it? What do you want?
Well, that's why one of the reasons I was just looking to write an entertaining book. So if people think it's entertaining, then I've done my job. I'm looking at. I think if you're reading a sports book, I think you should be able to knock it over in a couple of days or 3 days. That's my opinion. So I like it to go, knock it over and finish it. So I was mindful of keeping it short, sharp, and around about 200 pages, which I think we've done in the end, which is great.
We have. No, it looks great. It's going to be a great book for readers. Thank you, everybody, for watching. We're going to leave it there today. Thank you, Laughlin, for joining us.
No problems.
Everybody watching, please do grab a copy, as I said, of Laughlin's book anywhere you buy books. Local bookstores are preferred because you can actually support a small business, and you can buy it online anywhere as well. Thank you again. Everybody take care. Stay safe with COVID, and Laughlin, we'll talk again soon. So thank you.
Look forward to it. Thanks, Brad.